So we're going to just back up very briefly to get us caught up, since we've had some people, guest teachers and stuff in and out from some continuity. What is going on? Where are we at right now in chapter 29? Who is the main character of chapter 29? Jacob. And Jacob has a brother whose name is Esau. And are Jacob and Esau in proximity? Are they together in chapter 29, or what is going on? He's on the run. Jacob is on the run because Esau is threatening, or has threatened to kill him. Why did Esau want to kill Jacob? He, in his mind, stole his birthright, which he did. There was actually Esau, that was called a profane person, who gave away his blessing or his birthright for a mess of stew when he was starving one day coming in from hunting. But then Jacob, he stole his birthright. Was it Jacob's idea to steal the birthright? Who?
Rebecca, his mom.
His mom's idea. Because whenever she brought up the idea, when she heard that Isaac was getting ready to bless Esau, am I keeping my name straight? That's right? She overheard that. So she's listening, right? Again, you get in trouble when you kind of listen to other people's conversations. She's listening, she hears that, and she tells Jacob of her plan. Was Jacob like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, let's do that? Was his initial thing like he wanted to? No, he did not want to. Because he actually said, if I get found out, it wasn't for like pure motive necessarily, but he goes, if I get found out, my father's going to end up cursing me instead of blessing me. But she goes, remember she said, that curse be upon me. We're going to do this plan with the goat skin and all this stuff, making the meal. So that she let him in that deception, which again, that's a story going on right now. But the overall reaching is how God is going to use Jacob to establish his country, his covenant, his people. But he's using a man that's got a lot of flaws, right? Again, when I see that in the Bible, I'm not pointing out just to tear down somebody in retrospect. Hindsight's 20/20. But it gives me hope, because sometimes I feel people think that Christianity, the bar is so high, which it is, but they feel that it's so high that they get discouraged and are like, I can't do this. But the Bible shows us the heroes of the Bible with their flaws. And to me, again, that gives us hope that people who deceive, people who did things wrong, still could live pleasing to God and be used by God. So he's doing that. Isaac gets close to the time of his death. And what was Esau's plan when he was going to die? To Jacob. Yeah, he goes, my dad's getting ready to die. After the days of mourning are over for him, I'm going to kill my brother. that is what I'm going to do. Rebecca hears about it. She says, you have to go. And where, in kind of 28, where is Isaac? Where did he tell Jacob to go? Right. He sends him back to his home country. He says, do not marry somebody from here. Because who had married people from there? Esau had. And it's interesting. There's like a single verse at the end of the two preceding chapters that says, like, Esau's wives drove Isaac and Rebekah insane, to paraphrase, basically. It says that they drove them nuts. And so Isaac's like, you're going to go away. We're going to send you back to our home. Do not marry anybody from here. There's probably twofold. One, we don't want to be driven nuts. And two, again, they were idolatrous people, right? He's trying to keep the faith pure in his son. We also remember whenever Jacob was deceiving his father, and I think the visiting preacher, I can't remember his name. What was his name? Adon. He pointed this out. How did Jacob refer to Isaac's God? Does he refer to him as our God? When he asked him about how he got the venison so quickly, remember what he said? Your God provided it. I never had caught that before. That's actually a very unique distinction, because don't know how strong the faith was in Jacob at that time. It's hard to figure out exactly where people are reading about them. But what happened in chapter 28 left no doubt. Again, sealed the deal. Because what did he see when he was fleeing in chapter 28? The vision. He saw the ladder. He said, this is God is in this place. He was terrified. He goes, surely this is the entrance into heaven. You know, he set this stone up that he slept on. He anointed it with oil. The faith that might have been abstract in Jacob prior to that is now very, very concrete. He has seen it. And I think there is obviously a change in Jacob that happens in chapter 28. Okay, anything else on any of that? Just a little quick review before we get to 29. All good? Okay, somebody read for me verses 1 through 8. Chapter 29, verses 1 through 8.
Then Jacob went on his journey and came to the land of the people of the east. As he looked, he saw a well in the field, and behold, 3 flocks of sheep lying beside it. For out of the well the flocks were watered. The stone on the well's mouth was large, and when all the flocks were gathered there, the shepherds would roll the stone from the mouth of the well in the water and water the sheep, and put the stone back in its place over the mouth of the well. Jacob said to them, My brothers, where do you come from? They said, We are from Haran. And he said to them, Do you know Laban the son of Nahor? They said, We know him. He said to them, Is it well with him? They said, It is well, and see, Rachel his daughter is coming with the sheep. He said, Behold, it is still high day. It is not time for the livestock to be gathered together. Water the sheep and go pasture them. But they said, We cannot wait until all the flocks are gathered together and the stone is rolled from the mouth of the well. Then we water the sheep.
Okay, so Jacob, we catch up with him as he's coming into, you would say, his family's home country, right? So he comes across some shepherds and he sees them with flocks around the well. He starts asking questions. Hey, where are you from? This is where we're from. Do you know of this man? Yes, we know him. Is it well? So he's kind of figuring out where he is geographically, right? Am I in the right place yet? And then also there's a little background there with again, it's going to, when we read further on, it's going to get some more insight. But what is going on with the animals there? What are they waiting for?
Everybody to get there.
Yeah, they have a well, and apparently they have a well that is a free-flowing well, but they don't want it to free flow up, so they have a stone that actually seals it off. And they apparently have an agreement. They all wait till everybody gets there, and then they roll the stone back. Because water is precious, right? Especially if you're raising animals in a semi-desert area, you utilize the water, you cap it back up. So that is kind of what's going on. Does anybody have any idea how old Jacob is right here? Anybody have notes in their Bible or anything?
70s.
How old? 70s? Pretty good approximate. Because what can you think of any of the benchmarks of time where we get his age stated before this? You know how old he was when he got married? You remember that?
37.
Close. I think it was 40.
40.
I think it was 40. I think actually that when his mother died, he was 37. I think it was 3 years for the journey, and then so he was 40 when he got married. Does anybody remember how long it took? Oh man, my name's his wife. It's I don't know why I said get confused with names here. It's Rebecca, right? How long it took her to have Jacob and Esau?
20 years.
20 years. So he's at least 60. At the very minimum, 60. So again, sometimes I read these stories, and I don't know why I envision a certain age man, then you kind of go back and look like, oh, he's a much older man. So he's in his 70s probably at this point. So he's a little bit of an older man, which is to me unique to what's going to happen here with the rock on the well. You think of something like he's getting ready to move it, something a younger man would do, but he's actually pretty fit for a 70-year-old, probably more fit obviously than I am right now because I couldn't move a rock, that's for sure. Anything else in the first 8 verses there?
So you're saying Jacob is about 70 years old?
Somewhere in there.
Okay.
In Jerry's notes, he had him at around 77. I went back and looked. I couldn't get to that figure with what I could find, but what I did find was 40 that married, 20 having kids. His kids are getting ready to get married or picking wives. So again, you throw in there about 20-ish if you're rounding. So he's in that ballpark. He's probably pushing 80 actually. That's probably a pretty good estimate right there. Any other questions on that? All right, someone read verses 9 through 14.
And while he yet spake with them, Rachel came with his father's sheep, or she kept it. And it came to pass when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, that Jacob went near and rolled the stone from the well mouth, and watered the flocks of Laban, his mother's brother. And Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted up his voice and wept. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's brother, that he was Rebekah's son, and she ran and told her father. It came to pass when Laban heard the tidings of Jacob his sister's son, that he ran to meet him, and embraced him, kissed him, and brought him to his house, and he told Laban all these things. Keep on.
Yep, 14.
And Laban said to him, surely thou art my bone and my flesh. And he abode with him the space of a month.
Okay, so when we stop reading in verse 8, they were waiting, the other shepherds there were waiting to water their flock. Jacob shows up, and the men that he's talking to point out that here comes Rachel, and she actually takes care of her father's sheep. And so she is showing up, and it appears like that there's an agreement among the shepherds. We're only going to move the stone and water at this time. And Jacob said, like, this is not the time to be watering animals. You should be doing this, at a different time. So is Jacob involved in that pact on when they're supposed to water the animals? No, he just showed up. But here's his family, and here much less a woman coming with the sheep. So what does he do?
He rolls it up.
He goes, I'm not waiting. I'll move the stone, and he waters basically his family's flocks, right? Even though he's just showed up on location. What do you think about Jacob's reaction there in verse 11?
He just went up, kissed this girl, and then he told her who he was. I'm thinking, everybody's going, who are you?
It's strange, right? It's strange to us. It's a cultural difference, right? And I'm not even sure when he kissed her here, like it was like a
affectionate kiss.
like a boyfriend girlfriend. It might have been like a greeting. Yeah, but still, again, for our ear and reading it, it's strange. And the fact that he starts crying, immediately. That's this American custom. Do men cry? No, you can put a nail gun through your hand. You're not supposed to cry, right? That's not how it's supposed to be. But again, it's a different culture, a different time. So he kisses her in greeting. He begins to weep because what is the realization? I mean, he was sent on a journey, and what is he realizing? He's there, man. He's made it. This is his family. Again, we take so much stuff for granted because we go to see somebody, we got GPS, you got maps, you got plans, your phones, you call, hey, I'm coming. He was just told go, so he's out there by himself. I mean, when he saw the vision of the ladder, he was sleeping on the ground with pillows. So you're just kind of, I don't even know how they navigate. I guess I don't know if they did it by stars like they did, with Sailor. I don't know how they knew where they were going. But he goes on this journey, and he gets there, and he finds these people. Do these people know him, to use a figure of speech, from Adam? Do they know him? Here's a second question. How long has it been, approximately, since Rebekah had left Laban? How long has it been?
At least 40 years.
Ooh, yeah, it's true. At least 40 years. How old did we just say Jacob was?
77.
So how long has it been?
He's 77.
At least, probably pushing 100 years. So it's not like he's been gone for a year or two and showing back up. It has been a century, and here he comes back into town. And they use some expressions of how they're related. Did you catch some of the differences they said in there about brother versus sister, son? Did you catch any of that? It says mother's, your brother's mother. He refers to himself in one place as Laban's brother, but then there's other places where it's more descriptive, more accurate descriptive. When it says, in verse 12 it says, Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's brother, okay? That's where, he's not literally her father's brother. That's just saying like kinsman. And then he goes on and it's actually gets more accurate with where it was. Where was that at actually?
Verse 13.
New King James says relative.
It says relative, that would be an accurate translation there.
And that he was Rebekah's son.
Yeah, okay. In verse 13, it came to pass when Laban heard the tidings of Jacob, his sister's son. That's actually who he is in familiar relations, specifically, right? So, Laban, how old is Laban? This one I don't know. He's old. He's got to be really
I don't
old.
know if he's older or younger than his sister.
But yeah, I've always read it. That's a good point. When I read it, I assumed he was older. Huh?
Old enough to know his sisters.
Yeah, but I always assumed he was older because he was concerned about it when she left. I always took it as like an older brother concern for a younger.
Blessing or something when she left.
Huh?
Kind of had to give his blessing when she left.
Yeah, so you would think, I don't know if it's because he was a male or because he was his older brother. So he's old. And so when you read about, when he hears the story in verse 13, when he heard the tidings, what does he do to meet him? He runs. That's just, he's an old man, he goes to meet his family. So Jacob recounts the story to him, and when he tells him everything that he knows, what is Laban's reaction in verse 14? This is bone of my bone, flesh of my son. This is my sister's son. So you're your family. Come stay in my house. Welcome here again. The hospitality, they would probably invite him in the house anyway, because that's just how they were. But especially with family, you think about the New Testament, where it tells us to do good unto all men, but then it throws an especially on there. And who's the especially for? The household of faith. So these people were hospitable to everybody. But when they were in their own household, it was even more so. So he brings them into his house. Anything else in that section?
He did live in for a month before anything's done.
Yeah. Again, long journey, right? And he's staying with him. And again, by what he already showed with Rachel in the taking care of water and sheep, he's a hand, right? He's coming. He's not just there hanging out. They're a herdsman type family. He is no doubt working, right? And so he stays with him for a month, and then it's going to lead to the conversation we're going to have in the next section here. Someone read 15 through verse 20.
Laban said unto Jacob, because thou art my brother, shouldest thou therefore serve me not? Tell me that thou shalt tell me what shall thy wages be. And Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. And Leah's eyes were tender, but Rachel was beautiful and well favored. Jacob loved Rachel. He said, I will serve thee 7 years for Rachel, thy younger daughter. And Laban said, it is better that I give her to thee than that I should give her to any other man. Abide with me. And Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed unto him but a few days for the love he had for her.
Okay, so he's there for a month, and after a month's time, Laban goes, man, it's not really fair. Even though you're family, you're here working for me. He goes, just because you're family, it shouldn't be for free. What do you want? What's your wages? What do you want to earn? And what does he ask for? Yeah, he likes Rebecca. He met Rebecca. He goes, I want to. Rachel, did I say it wrong? That's right. Correct me. Please correct me because I'm going to get. I don't know why this whole section. I get the names wrong in this all the time. So please don't hesitate to correct me. Wow. Rachel. He likes Rachel, and that's who he asked for. Again, the names in here are funny to me. Did anybody look up what the names mean? Does anybody know what Leah means? This is so bad. I feel bad for Leah. Leah gets a raw deal in this whole story. Did anybody look it up?
Weird. Fire.
It means, what I looked up means wild cow. Now, why you named your daughter Wild Cow, I have no idea, but that's what he named her, Wild Cow. Rachel's name means you. It's like, a young sheep, and that's what she was taking care of, right? So I just like, oh, it is such a bad deal for Leah. Again, I feel sorry for Leah most of the story. what do you think it means in verse 17 where it says, Leah was, in King James, tender-eyed, but Rachel was beautiful and well-favored? Does anybody have anything else in different versions in there?
Mine says eyes were weak.
Eyes were weak. In Jerry's notes, it doesn't, he says, it didn't mean like her eyes were bad, like she couldn't see, but he said apparently custom, like the eyes, maybe because of where they wore the veil, the eyes really showed the beauty of a woman, which you could see. And Leah's eyes weren't that great, so she wasn't that, her appearance wasn't considered that great. Which would make sense because it contrasts her with Rachel. What does it say about Rachel? She's beautiful. So again, I feel bad for Rachel. One, she's named Wild Cow, and then two, she has a sister, and her sister's prettier than her. That's always a rough go for the ladies, right? If you have huh?
Feel bad for Jake.
Oh, Jacob's getting ready. Yeah, Jacob's getting ready to get.
7 years for a wife, and then they give him the wrong
We
one.
haven't got there. You're jumping ahead. That's what's going to happen. Yeah, but you're exactly right. But again, so he asked for wages, and again, Jacob, does he ask for money? Nope. He wants her. And what's the time period on it? 7 years. And what does it say about those 7 years? Like, that's young love right there, right? Young love. That's like a few days.
That's a young-year-old man.
Huh?
He's 80 years old.
But still, the young is love. He's not young. The young is love. I think about, because I watch kids nowadays, and like I said, I'm old, I'm tired, I don't want to do anything. But they're like, whenever they're going to see a girl, they'll leave at, I think I've even had David tell someone this, they'll leave at midnight and they'll drive across the state and show up at 4 in the morning, and it's like nothing to them. Dude, if you ask me to get up at midnight and drive to 4, I'm like, what are we doing? I'm not going. I'll go in the morning. I'm tired, man. I want to sleep. But when you're not necessarily young, but young love, and it's nothing. So he said he worked 7 years, and it was like it was a few days. It was nothing for what he saw as a reward of getting Rachel's hand. Anything else in there? All right, let's get to the deception part here. 21 through 30.
Jacob said unto Laban, Give me my wife, for my days are fulfilled, that I may go in unto her. And Laban gathered together all the men of the place and made a feast. And it came to pass in the evening that he took Leah, his daughter, and brought her to him, and he went in unto her. And Laban gave unto his daughter Leah Zilpah, his maid, for a handmaid. And it came to pass that in the morning, behold, it was Leah. And he said unto Laban, What is this that thou hast done unto me? Did not I serve thee for Rachel? Wherefore hast thou beguiled me? And Laban said, It must not be so done in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. Fulfill her week, and we shall give thee this also for the service which thou shalt serve with me yet 7 other years. And Jacob did so, and fulfilled her week, and he gave him Rachel, his daughter, wife also. And Laban gave to Rachel, his daughter, Bilhah, his handmaid, to be her maid. And he went in also unto Rachel, and he loved also Rachel more than Leah, and served with him yet 7 other years.
Here comes the problems, man. Here comes the issues. A lot of bad stuff, untoward stuff going on in here. So he worked 7 years. He's working for Rachel. So after he works those 7 years, he goes into Laban and says, I worked my 7 years. I want to get married. It's time to get married. So Laban, does he give any of the things that's going to happen? Does he give Jacob any heads up? Say, hey, the custom in this country is the older one gets married before. Does he tell him that up front? No. So what do you know about Laban's character right away? He's not to be trusted. He's shifty, right? Because he's already inclined, because he's already got 7 years of labor out of him, right? And he's probably thinking to himself, and later on we're going to learn that he was very successful in what he did. God was with him. God blessed him. And so he's in his mind going like, I don't want to let this guy go. He's going to get married. He's probably going to go back home. What can I do to keep him around a bit longer? Now, again, that's not said, but to me, that's pretty much implied what's kind of going on here, right?
But they had this feast,
Sir?
if we had this feast, Jacob, I was going to go there, he didn't know he wouldn't.
Yeah, what happened here? I got some questions here of why he didn't recognize. Is that what you're asking, why he didn't recognize? So he goes to get married. Laban's like, sure, we're getting married. Let's get together and have a big feast. So what does it tell us in verse 23? What's a clue we get there of why he maybe didn't recognize her? One, it's in the evening, so this deception happens under the cover of darkness. Okay, my names again. This is Rachel going back to Rebecca when she met Isaac. What did Rebecca do at the end of the caravan when she was told, who's this man walking towards me? And she goes, that's my master. What did she do to herself when she knew it was her husband coming toward her? She put a veil on, right? So two, one, it was in the evening. Two, more than likely, she had on a veil. But we already saw earlier on that by the eyes, you could probably tell them apart, right? Because one was beautiful, one was tender-eyed. So what is another possibility that this deception might have helped carry it out?
Big old poofy gown.
Something, big old poofy gown, possibly. But again, not said, but maybe. Huh? Drink. There was a feast going on.
That's what I'm saying.
Think about when Lot fled Sodom and Gomorrah, and his daughters thought that there was no more men left. What did they do to their father? They got him drunk, and what does it say about Lot? He didn't know when they laid down, and he didn't know when they got up. So, again, I wrote down those side. I go, it was dark, they could have had a veil on, and there might have been a little alcohol involved. And so you wake up in the morning and you're like, ooh, this is not the girl I thought I married, which is a pretty big mistake, right? That's a pretty big one. Uh-huh.
It's the cow, not the you.
Right. That's a bad trade. You think you get a union with a wild cow, that's a bad trade, right? That's a bad deal. So the reaction to me is priceless. What does Jacob do in the morning? Who does he go see? Laban. And what is his complaint?
What have you done? Serve Rachel.
You have deceived me. How dare you? The audacity of Jacob making that statement is unbelievable, right? Because what has Jacob done? Mr. Name means supplanter. Why is he there? Why is he running from his life? Because you did the exact same thing.
The urging of his mother, who was Laban's sister.
Yeah. So yeah, Laban and the Laban's household must have been a little peculiar there, right? You know, because they're always working angles, right, from his sister to him. But he's mad because he got deceived when he is a deceiver. Have you ever known anybody like that? Not necessarily this specific, but I've seen people like, they'll be the worst. Let's just say a mean person, right? Mean. And all of a sudden someone's mean to them, they're like, I can't believe you're being mean to me. And you're like, if you're on the outside looking at you, are you serious? That's all you do. And you're complaining that you're getting it back? So to me, Jacob's reaction to this is humorous a little bit because he's upset because he's been deceived, but that is exactly what he was and what he had done. Sometimes, like I said, you don't realize that you have a personal flaw or trait until somebody does that to you, and then you can see what you've been doing. Sometimes, hopefully, you wake up and you're like, "Ooh, I haven't been. This doesn't feel good for this to be done to me. I shouldn't have been doing that to other people."
That's right, what you said.
That's right. That's what the Bible says, right? It comes back to you, right? So, what does Laban do?
It's not the custom for the younger to marry the older.
Now he brings out this custom thing like, oh, in our country, here, we can't do that. You can't let the younger girl marry before the older daughter. So, fulfill, what did he say? He says, fulfill her week. What do you think that is?
They're together for a week, and then he goes on.
Yeah, kind of like a honeymoon week, maybe. He says, I'll let you marry Rachel, but we won't do it we're gonna give Leah, the wild cow, a whole week with you, one-on-one before we bring in Rachel, right? And so he tells him, he goes, in a week you can marry Rachel, but you got to do something else for me. And what's he get out of him? 7 more years. So 14 years he ends up basically working for Rachel, and he got Leah in the bargain as well, right?
Jacob, pay attention because this is a custom. He's
been there for 7 years.
Should have picked up on that. Surely if there was a wedding somewhere else around, and that would have been discussed. Or so again, whether or not it was a custom, it might have been. It might make sense, but and again, you should tell me up front, right? There's nothing worse than entering into a negotiation or a deal, and then people surprising things on you. Oh, by the way, it's not that, it's this, or oh, you got to do this as well, or it costs a little more. No one likes that, right?
Do we know how old the daughters are?
Yeah, I don't. I don't know. Does anybody else have anything about how old they are?
I mean, Jacob's older, I just didn't know if he was seeing, if they're older too, he was seeing that she might not have a husband. This is his chance to get her married off.
I assume they're relatively young on both of them. Okay, so the reason I assume that, they have a slew of kids. They have a pack of kids, and it talks about even previous to this with Sarah when she was past childbearing age, and at that time when the promise came to her, she was 65. So I'm assuming these are probably younger girls, probably in their 20s. Big age difference on the marriage, right? Which again was custom back then. It's not that big a deal, but because again, even after Sarah died, what did Abraham do? When he was 100 plus something years old, he got married and had like 6 or 7 more kids, right? So I assume these are relatively young girls, 20s, 30s, somewhere in there. I don't have anything to base it on other than the fact that they're getting ready to have a whole pack of kids here. So they had to be of childbearing age. When they get married, Laban gives them each a handmaid, correct? How does that contrast to going all the way back to Rebecca, what she got? Go back in verse 24, chapter 24, verse 61. Whenever she was sent to go marry Isaac, what is she sent off with? A handmaid, and what else?
Oh, yeah, nurse.
It says her rose and her damsels. She got sent off with a bunch of people. It wasn't just a handmaid. She had a little mini entourage of people that went and took care of her. They were wealthy people. Now, do you think their wealth has decreased in this amount of time? It's been 100 years. Maybe so, maybe not. But again, if you kind of look at Laban's character, that he just gives them a handmaid, what does that kind of again show about his character? A little selfish, a little stingy. Yeah, a little cheap. That's why you get that impression from Laban here, from almost all the interactions, that he's kind of that way. So this might be another indicator of that as well.
The dowry that was brought for Rebecca, it was substantial.
True.
So it should have increased their wealth also.
That is true. He gave him a lot of stuff, right? No doubt. That's right. I forgot about that. That's true.
Enough for them to have been surprised by the gifts that were given, so.
Right.
Pretty substantial amount.
Right. In verse 30, what do we see? Very key thing there. That's rough, right? He loved Rachel more than Leah. Who else? Where else would we see just recent history in the Bible that somebody loved somebody more than the other and caused problems? I mean, why are we here with Jacob and Esau? Yeah. Lord, and then Isaac over Esau. So anytime there's favoritism, it's problems. It brings about problems. I'm going to go ahead and just read verse 31 because I want to bring up a point about, he loved Rachel more than Leah. Verse 31 says, and when the Lord saw that Leah was hated, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. It's a pretty strong contrast when we use the word hate versus love. Is there do you pick up anything here that Jacob hated Leah? Because what did it say in verse 30?
She has lots of sons by him, so.
Yeah, she has a lot of kids.
Loved Rachel more than Leah, so he loved her.
He loved Leah. It is, but he just loved Rachel more. So again, the idea of sometimes when you see that word hate, doesn't we get the thing is like, oh, hate is this complete animosity, but it can mean love less. You think about it when it's used about in the New Testament in Luke 14:26 when Jesus was talking about to his followers. What did he say to them about their mother and father and all of them? He says, you can't be my disciple unless you hate your father, hate your mother. Again, if we take hate like complete animosity, and it said people might have taken it like that then, because when Jesus said it, what was the reaction? I'm out. you're asking me to hate my mother and father? I can't do that. But again, with what we've seen right here, what was Jesus asking them to do?
Love them less than me.
That's right. The love we have for Jesus, for God, has to be above all the other loves, right? You have to love him more than your spouse. You have to love him more than your children. You have to love him more about any earthly relationship, right? That is our primary relationship. And do we see that in practice or do we not see that in practice? When you see people who are down the line scripturally on whatever the doctrine might be, an easy one to pick out is divorce or remarriage, right? Down the line with that. They understand Matthew 19:9, they get it. They'll preach it, they'll teach it, they'll live by it. One of their kids gets divorced and gets remarried. And then you ask them about that doctrine, and what do they say? They'll hedge. What does that show?
Look for offspring more than.
That's exactly right. And that just can be outside of it, can be in any doctrine, right? You'll see people who'll be one way when it gets to their family, they'll change. We can't be that way. God has to come first. Has to. No matter what sacrifices, no matter what lines it draws, no matter what lines of fellowship it may draw, we have to put God first. That makes sense? All right, we'll finish up the last little bit. I'll go ahead and read it. And Leah, again, because God has a concern for those who are slighted and those who are weak. So God is going to bless Leah here by having kids. I got time to read that. So it said, verse 32, and Leah conceived and bare a son, and she called his name Reuben. For she said, surely the Lord hath looked upon my affliction. Now therefore my husband will love me. So does Leah, sometimes people can like somebody better than the other, and you might not know. Does Leah know? Oh, Leah knows. Leah knows that he likes Rachel more, right? So Reuben means behold a son. Now again, the idea of offspring, especially male offspring, was a big thing. So she's hoping the fact that she's having children, especially male children, that Jacob will love her more or love her equally. And it's a concern for her that you're going to see that she's going to express with each one of her kids she's going to have. So apparently it wasn't changing Jacob's attitude towards her, but she was hoping that it would. And she conceived again, verse 33, and bare a son and said, blessed because the Lord hath heard I was hated, he has therefore given me this son also. And she called his name Simeon, and Simeon means hearing. So again, each one of her kids, Jacob still doesn't love me. I'm still on the outside looking in. God, see my affliction. God, hear my prayer for my husband to love me. Verse 34, she conceived again and bare a son and said, now this time will my husband be joined unto me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore his name was called Levi. Levi means attachment. She again is longing for her husband to see her as an equal spouse to Rachel. In verse 35, she conceived again and bare a son and said, now will I praise the Lord. Therefore she called his name Judah and left off bearing. And Judah means praise of Yahweh. So again, whenever you have an imbalance of love in a family, where one is favored on another, it creates problems. And you can see Leah, through having these 4 children right here, is yearning for her love towards Jacob to be reciprocated, where she feels on par or equal with Rachel.